The glass roof of Fort Liberty International glowed gold under the morning sun. Travelers streamed through the terminal, pulling suitcases that hummed against the marble floor. Announcements echoed like clockwork, calm and mechanical. No one noticed the two children sitting by the window. Eli and Emma Vance looked too neat, too composed for 10-year-olds waiting alone. Their clothes weren't trendy, just pressed and precise. Navy jackets with tiny silver NASA pins that caught the light every time someone walked by. Between them sat a single duffel bag, tagged Government Escort, Priority Boarding, Washington, D.C. Emma swung her feet above the polished tile, counting the seconds on the big airport clock. Every time the second hand hit 12, she whispered something under her breath, a tiny habit she'd picked up since the funeral. 56, 57, 58 for Dad. Eli didn't say anything. He kept his eyes on the glass outside, where jets lifted like white birds into a clean blue sky. His hand rested on his father's old watch, an old-fashioned silver timepiece strapped to his small wrist. It didn't really fit, but he wore it anyway. The back was engraved, "If dignity is denied, press and hold 3 seconds." He didn't fully understand what it meant. Maybe a joke, maybe a lesson. But his father had looked serious when he said it, the night before that test flight, the one that never came back. A flight attendant passed by, dragging a suitcase. She gave the kids a polite smile, but didn't slow down. People rarely did. Most saw 2 well-mannered children in neat uniforms and assumed someone else was watching them. Across the terminal, a woman whispered to her husband, "Those must be part of some school program." He nodded, not even glancing their way. That was fine. Eli preferred it that way. Attention always came with pity, and pity made his stomach twist. "Are we really flying first class?" Emma asked quietly. He nodded. "NASA arranged it. They said we'd meet the escort in D.C. Emma smiled, small and shy. "Dad would have hated first class." "Yeah," Eli said. And for a moment, it almost sounded like a laugh. "He'd say it's inefficient." They both smiled, but it didn't last. The loudspeaker crackled overhead. "Helios Air Flight 402 to Washington, D.C., now boarding at Gate 17. First-class passengers only." Eli stood, lifting the duffel bag. It felt heavier than it should. Inside were 2 folded dress uniforms, a framed photo, and the medal they would return to NASA for public display. The official ceremony was in 2 days. "Come on," he said, holding out his hand. Emma slipped her small fingers into his. They walked side by side, their reflections stretching long across the polished floor. From a distance, they looked like any siblings heading off on an adventure. Up close, their faces told a quieter story, one of duty learned too early. Gate 17 was crowded. A line of business travelers in suits scrolled through phones, impatient and silent. The first-class counter shimmered with gold trim. A few people glanced at the children, puzzled, but no one said anything. A middle-aged man ahead of them lowered his newspaper, eyes softening. "You kids traveling alone?" "Yes, sir," Eli said. The man smiled faintly. "Brave thing you're doing." He didn't explain what he meant, but Eli understood. He must have read the press release, the one about their father's crash during the propulsion test at the Kennedy site, the one that called it a sacrifice for exploration. "Thank you," Eli murmured. Emma's hand tightened around his. "Eli," she whispered, "do you think Dad's watching?" He looked down at the watch. The second hand ticked, steady and calm. I think he never stopped. At the counter, the flight attendant scanned their boarding passes without even glancing up. Her name tag read, Hensley. Her voice was clipped, efficient. "Gate 17. First-class boarding to your left." Eli nodded politely, guiding Emma toward the queue. He didn't notice the way Hensley's eyes narrowed when she saw the kids stepping into the velvet-roped line reserved for executives. She leaned to another crew member, muttering something that made them both smirk. Emma caught the glance and looked down, cheeks coloring. "They think we don't belong." Eli wanted to say something comforting, but the words stuck. He just squeezed her hand. Behind them, The intercom repeated. First-class passengers, please prepare for pre-boarding. The line began to move. As they reached the boarding gate, Emma slowed. Eli, she whispered, I'm scared. He crouched slightly so they were eye to eye. We'll sit by the window. You can watch the clouds. Dad used to say clouds are just oceans waiting for wings. She nodded, blinking fast to hide the tears. When they stepped forward, a sudden voice stopped them. Excuse me, kids, the flight attendant said sharply. This line's for first-class passengers only. Eli turned, confused. Yes, ma'am, we are. Her eyes flicked from their jackets to the duffel, to the NASA insignia patch on Emma's sleeve. That's cute, she said, lips tight. Costumes for some school trip? Emma's throat closed. No, ma'am. It's... Let me see your passes. Eli handed them over. She barely looked, just waved them off. You'll need to wait for general boarding. First class is for paying passengers. But move aside, she snapped, voice louder now. Heads turned. The man with the newspaper frowned but didn't step in. Emma's lower lip trembled. Eli's face flushed red, anger mixing with fear. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The woman leaned closer, her perfume sharp and cold. You don't belong here. The words cut deeper than the slap that would follow. Eli froze. The terminal noise seemed to vanish. No chatter, no footsteps, just the echo of those 4 words looping in his head. You don't belong here. He looked down at his father's watch. The second hand ticked once, twice, and somewhere deep in the circuitry of a forgotten network, a light prepared to blink for the first time in years. The hum of engines outside Gate 17 filled the air like distant thunder. Travelers shifted restlessly, juggling laptops and lattes, eyes fixed on their boarding groups. The world kept moving, except for 2 kids standing very, very still. Eli and Emma Vance were next in line. Emma held her boarding pass tight, the paper already crumpled in her palm. Her nose still burned from holding back tears, but she refused to cry. Dad never cried, not even in that old video where the rocket test failed. He just smiled, said, Failure's a teacher, dignity's the diploma. The flight attendant, Clara Hensley, didn't seem like she'd learned that lesson. She blocked the walkway with a stiff arm, her polished nails flashing under the fluorescent light. Sweetheart, she said, voice wrapped in fake warmth. This is first class. You're going to need to step aside. Eli frowned. Ma'am, these are our seats. NASA booked them. Clara's smile thinned. NASA? She tilted her head as if hearing a bad joke. Honey, first class is for paying passengers. You 2 need to wait with everyone else. She snatched the boarding passes from Eli's hand before he could reply. The scanner beeped. Green. Twice. Real tickets. But she didn't hand them back. Where are your parents? She asked. Emma's voice trembled. Our dad's gone. Our mom's waiting in D.C. Gone? Clara repeated, almost rolling the word on her tongue. I see. So, this is some sympathy arrangement? Eli's jaw tightened. It's an official trip. We're representing... Clara cut him off with a sharp laugh. Representing? Sweetheart, you're wearing costumes. You think a patch and a badge make you astronauts? A few people nearby chuckled quietly. Others looked away. Emma's small voice broke through the tension. They're not costumes. What's that, dear? Clara leaned closer, eyes glinting. Emma tried again, but her throat closed around the words. Eli stepped forward, his voice steady but soft. Please, give us our passes back. Clara didn't. Instead, she held them up like evidence. Look at this, everyone. 2 unaccompanied minors claiming to be NASA representatives. Isn't that something? Someone behind them muttered. They probably faked it online. Another. What's wrong with people these days? The heat rose behind Eli's ears. His hands shook, not from fear but from humiliation. He could feel Emma trembling beside him, her small body pressed against his arm. Ma'am, he said carefully, our escort is waiting in D.C. You can call... Oh, I'll call someone, Clara snapped, stepping closer. Security. Because what you're doing is fraud. She reached for the badge on Emma's jacket, the small silver emblem engraved with their father's name. Emma flinched back, clutching it with both hands. "Don't touch that," she said, her voice finally breaking through. The air went still. Clara's eyes hardened. "Excuse me? It's our father's," Emma whispered. He worked for..." But Clara was already moving. Her hand shot forward, grabbing the fabric at Emma's shoulder. "Enough! You can't parade around pretending to be..." The slap came fast, open-handed and loud. It cracked through the terminal like a gunshot. The sound echoed off the high glass ceiling. A coffee cup hit the floor somewhere behind them. The man with the newspaper froze mid-breath. A little boy in line started crying. Emma stumbled back, her cheek glowing red. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she looked up, eyes wide, wet, disbelieving, at the woman who had just hit her. Clara lowered her hand, chest rising and falling, face unflinching. "This isn't a charity flight," she hissed. "First class is for real passengers." No one spoke. No one moved. Eli stood frozen, every nerve screaming. He heard the tick of his father's watch. He wanted to shout, to demand someone do something, but the words died in his throat. He was 10, small, invisible, and his sister had just been struck by an adult in uniform. Emma's lip quivered, but she didn't cry. She bent down instead, slow and careful, picking up the badge that had fallen to the floor. A thin smear of dust streaked across its surface. She wiped it with her sleeve, breathing unevenly. Clara rolled her eyes. "Drama queen," she muttered. Eli stepped between them before he could stop himself. "Don't talk to her like that." Clara's expression sharpened. "You watch your tone, young man. You're lucky I don't..." "Don't what?" The voice came from behind her. The man with the newspaper. His tone wasn't loud, but it carried. "You just hit a child." Clara stiffened. "Sir, stay out of this." But the man didn't back away. "She's bleeding." Emma touched her cheek. A small line of red dotted her skin. The sight hit Eli like a blade of guilt. "Give me our tickets," he said, quieter now, almost pleading. "Please." Clara finally dropped them on the counter with a scoff. "Go wait by the wall. Security will handle it." Eli didn't move. His heart pounded against the watch strapped to his wrist. If dignity is denied, press and hold 3 seconds. He looked at Emma, her tear-streaked face, her shaking hands clutching the badge. Something inside him shifted. He reached down, touched the side of the watch, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad." Then he pressed. 1 second, 2, 3. Nothing happened, at first. Then the terminal lights flickered. The boarding screens glitched, flashing red for a heartbeat before turning black. Somewhere, a low alarm beeped once, faint but sharp, like a pulse waking up. Clara frowned. "What the..." The PA system crackled. "Notice. Gray flag protocol initiated. Gate 17 operation suspended pending ethics review." The crowd stirred, confused murmurs rising. Phones lifted. Cameras rolled. Emma stared at her brother, wide-eyed. "Eli, what did you do?" He didn't answer. He just took her hand. Across the terminal, the man with the newspaper whispered to no one in particular. "That watch, it just saved her." And as the chaos swelled, Eli stood still in the middle of it. Quiet, shaking, eyes fixed on the tiny red light pulsing on his wrist. He didn't understand how or why, only that somewhere, somehow, the system had finally heard them. For a moment, the entire terminal forgot how to breathe. Gate 17, a place that, seconds earlier, had been nothing but noise and movement, now stood in perfect stillness. People froze mid-step, half bent over luggage or phones, their faces lit by the red glow of the gate screens flashing a single phrase: "Gray flag protocol, active." The hum of the air conditioning dropped an octave, then stopped altogether. Overhead, the fluorescent lights dimmed, as if someone had drawn a breath and forgotten to exhale. Emma's small hand trembled inside Eli's. She was still staring at his wrist, at the faint red light pulsing from their father's watch. "Eli," she whispered, "what is that? What did you do?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was blank, but his pulse was loud. It drowned out everything, the murmurs, the whispers. Even the woman who had hit his sister, now standing several feet away, blinking in disbelief. I didn't touch anything," Clara stammered, turning toward the gate agent. "The system's glitching. Reboot it." The gate agent's hand hovered uselessly above the keyboard. "It's locked," he said. "Everything's locked." Eli looked down at the watch again. The light blinked slower now, steady, deliberate, like it knew exactly what it was doing. Across the concourse, phones began to buzz. One passenger lifted his screen. Another leaned over his shoulder. Notifications flooded social media. Gray flag alert triggered. FAA lockdown at Fort Liberty International. Unconfirmed. Passenger ethics breach. In less than 30 seconds, #Gate17 was trending. But Eli didn't notice. He knelt beside Emma, who was shaking so hard she couldn't hold on to the badge anymore. It slipped from her fingers and clattered to the tile floor. The same tile where Clara's slap had echoed minutes ago. He picked it up gently, turning it over in his palm. The silver eagle emblem caught the dim red light and reflected it in a single streak across his fingers. For a second, he thought he saw his father's initials, DV, glowing faintly beneath the surface. He blinked, and it was gone. "Eli," Emma's voice broke. "Everyone's looking at us." He glanced up. Dozens of eyes, some curious, some afraid, some guilty, were fixed on them. No one moved to help. No one said a word. It was the same silence they'd lived in for months, the kind that follows after a tragedy, when everyone cares just enough to look but not enough to act. He closed his hand around the badge, then let them look. Clara snapped back to control, the way people do when they realize their power might be slipping. "All right, everyone, calm down," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound human. "It's just a system test, okay? Someone must have pressed the wrong button." A businessman near the back of the line muttered, "A 10-year-old just got slapped and the airline system shut down? That's not a test." The crowd stirred again. The quiet started to twist into something else. Tension, disbelief, the sharp edge of awakening. Clara pointed toward Eli. "You. What did you touch?" Eli didn't move. Nothing that wasn't already broken. Her face flushed red. "You little..." But before she could finish, the intercom cracked to life. The voice wasn't human, calm, neutral, automated, yet heavy with authority. "Attention. Gate 17 under ethics protocol lockdown. All Helios Air operations temporarily suspended pending federal verification." The gate agent backed away from the desk. Someone whispered, "Federal?" Another said, "This isn't airline software. This is homeland level." Emma squeezed Eli's arm. "That's Dad's system, isn't it?" He looked down at the watch again, his throat tightening. He remembered sitting in his father's lab months ago, watching him type code onto glowing screens. He'd asked, "Why do you build things that tell people they're wrong?" His father had smiled. "I don't. I build things that remind them how to be right." Now, in the middle of a silent airport, that code was answering back. Somewhere deep in the infrastructure of the U.S. aviation network, invisible connections lit up. From Fort Liberty to Dallas, Denver, New York, Seattle, Los Angeles. 12 airports in total. Their security terminals all displayed the same cryptic message. Gray flag protocol. Human dignity breach detected. Flights halted. Runways froze. Digital clocks stopped counting departures. In a monitoring center hundreds of miles away, a technician whispered, "This shouldn't even exist anymore." Another replied, "It's an override key, registered under Vance." At Gate 17, a woman in a gray suit arrived. No airline logo, no name tag. She carried a small earpiece and a badge clipped to her belt with 3 letters Eli didn't recognize. FAE. She spoke quietly into the device. Confirming origin. Signal traced to watch serial Delta Victor 09. Legacy network command. Human ethics override active. The crowd parted around her as she walked straight toward Eli and Emma. "Kids," she said softly, crouching down to their level. "Don't be afraid. You did nothing wrong." Emma blinked at her through tears. Is Daddy coming?" The woman's eyes softened, but she didn't answer that. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small device, and scanned the watch. It chimed once, blue to red, then stayed red. "Of course," she murmured, almost to herself. "He built it." Eli swallowed. "Who?" "Your father," she said. "He built the Skynet ethics system, the one that just froze 12 airports." Emma gasped. "Dad did?" The woman nodded, then turned her gaze toward Clara, who stood pale and speechless near the counter. "And it activated because someone failed to treat a protected passenger with dignity." No one applauded. No one shouted. The moment hung heavy. Not revenge, not triumph. Just the sound of a system remembering how to feel. Eli looked at his sister. Her cheek was still red, but her eyes were calm now, steady. "Is it over?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "It's just starting." The red light on the watch pulsed once more, slower this time, almost like a heartbeat. Somewhere in the silence, a man watching from the back whispered, "That wasn't a system error." He was right. It was accountability, finally awake. The silence at Gate 17 didn't last long. Airports aren't made for quiet, only for motion. And when motion stops, people panic. Phones buzzed. Laptops reopened. Gate agents whispered in frantic tones, trying to override locked screens that now glowed red with the same message. Gray flag protocol. Active Helios air operations suspended. Clara Hensley's voice broke the stillness first. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, brushing her hair back with shaking hands. "It's a software failure. Restart the system." The agent beside her whispered, "Ma'am, the system won't accept input. It's federal locked." "Federal locked?" she repeated, too loud. "Over a watch?" Her laugh sounded brittle, a crack in glass. "There's no such thing as a gray flag. Who even uses that term anymore?" But Eli Vance knew the name. He'd heard it years ago, one of those words adults said in hushed voices when they thought kids weren't listening. His father explaining something about protocols for when people forget to be human. He looked down at the glowing red light on the silver watch. It blinked in a slow, steady rhythm, the same rhythm as his heartbeat. 2 gates away, a man in a pilot's uniform spoke into his earpiece. "Fort Liberty's Gate 17 just went dark. They're saying gray flag activation. Can you confirm?" A distorted voice replied, "Confirmed. Secondary airports showing cross-sync. Denver, Seattle, Dallas, Boston, D.C. Total count, 12 sites." The pilot paused, stunned. 12 airports? The voice on the other end exhaled sharply. "That's not a glitch. That's a command." Back at Gate 17, the crowd had begun to fracture. Some passengers filmed. Others demanded answers. "Can we still board?" a man asked. Clara drew herself up, forcing confidence she didn't have. "Everything's fine. Technical issue. We'll have you boarding in..." The intercom interrupted her, clear and cold. "Attention all personnel. Gate 17 under review. All Helios aircrew stand by for federal assessment. Do not approach passengers." Her mouth snapped shut. Someone gasped. A woman whispered, "Federal assessment? For what?" No one answered. Eli held Emma's hand tightly, feeling her small fingers tremble. "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice shook too. "Dad's system knows what to do." Emma's eyes were wide. "System? What system?" "The thing he built," Eli said. "The one that helps when people are hurt." "I don't think it's just helping," she said softly, glancing at the frozen departure board. "I think it's telling the whole world." 50 seconds. Inside the FAA Operations Center in Washington, D.C., alarms flashed across 12 monitors. The network chief, an older man with tired eyes, stared at the data stream scrolling in front of him. Gray flag activation. Source Fort Liberty, Gate 17. Initiator code Vance09. His colleague frowned. Vance? As in Dr. Donovan Vance? The NASA systems architect who died last year? Apparently, the chief said. And whatever he built still works. He reached for the phone. Notify Homeland Security. Lock down Helios Air until further notice. At second 61, every Helios Air flight in U.S. airspace received an automated notice. Ethics hold. Pending review. Do not land or depart. Screens across terminals flickered in unison. On the map inside FAA headquarters, 12 dots turned red. Passengers looked up at monitors that once showed departure times and now read, Human dignity violation. Review in progress. Someone whispered, Is this real? Another voice answered, It has to be. No one could fake that. Clara's face drained of color. They're going to blame me. The gate agent didn't look at her. Maybe they should. Excuse me? He pointed toward Emma. The child's cheek was still swollen, a handprint faint beneath the pink flush. You did hit a kid, Dana. My name's Clara, she snapped. Whatever it is, the system knows. Emma winced as the terminal lights flickered again, then steadied. Eli, she whispered. I think people are scared. He nodded. Good. She blinked. Good? Because when they're scared, they listen. It was something their father used to say when explaining how his AI models trained. Fear wakes awareness, but only empathy fixes it. Eli didn't understand those words back then. Now he did. An announcement crackled overhead, low and measured. Notice. Ethics Protocol Level 2. Verification in progress. All Helios staff must stand down. FAA liaison en route. A woman in uniform appeared at the end of the hallway. Dark suit, short hair, calm eyes. She walked straight through the crowd toward Eli and Emma. Clara moved to block her. Who are you? This is our gate. The woman lifted a badge. Not anymore. Federal Aviation Ethics Division. Clara stepped back, stammering. I didn't know. The agent cut her off gently. People rarely do until it's too late. She knelt in front of Eli and Emma. Her tone was steady but soft. You don't need to speak right now. You've already been heard. Eli blinked. How? She tapped the watch on his wrist. That's how. One call, 1 minute later, 12 airports listened. Emma's eyes widened. All of them? Everyone, the agent said. They stopped because a child's dignity was denied. That's what your father designed this for. Clara let out a sharp laugh that broke on the edge of a sob. You can't seriously be telling me this is real. The agent looked up at her. It's real, and it's recorded. Reporters had already started to arrive. Some stood behind security lines filming the chaos, others whispering the same question into microphones. What exactly is the gray flag protocol, and why has it been triggered? Eli could hear the buzz of cameras behind him. He felt Emma lean against his arm, exhausted but safe. He wanted to be invisible again, but this time, invisibility was no longer an option. The system had seen them. The world was seeing them now. Far above the airport, in a tower office lined with monitors, a man watched the data feed without blinking. His gray eyes were steady, his jaw set. On the screen flashed the words, Legacy Command Vance 09. Authenticated. He picked up a secure line. Get me the Director of Homeland. We've got a Vance protocol live. Sir, someone asked, should we halt the review? He paused, watching the feed zoom in on two small figures at Gate 17, a boy and a girl standing in a circle of red light. No, he said quietly. Let it run. That's what he built it for. Back at the terminal, the intercom hummed again. Lower now, almost soothing. Gray flag protocol confirmed. All Helios Air operations frozen pending ethics review. Civilian safety priority 1. Passengers started to applaud. Not cheering, not clapping for fun, but a soft, slow applause of relief and recognition. Clara Hensley stood frozen, hand still half raised, her authority slipping through her fingers like sand. Eli looked at Emma. She wasn't crying anymore. Her hand rested over his watch, feeling the pulse of the light against her skin. "It hurt us," she whispered. Eli nodded, tears burning behind his eyes. "Yeah," he said softly. "And it did exactly what Dad promised." Washington, D.C., 7:42 a.m. Inside the Federal Aviation Operations Center, a wall of screens glowed in synchronized red. The hum of computers replaced the usual chatter. Rows of analysts stared at their terminals, watching airport after airport blink into lockdown mode. Alert. Gray flag protocol. Active source. Fort Liberty NTL Gate 17. The room buzzed with disbelief. No one had seen that phrase in years. It wasn't part of any current FAA system. It was legacy code, obsolete, supposedly buried after a classified NASA FAA ethics project was shelved more than a decade ago. A young technician whispered, "Who could even trigger this?" The lead controller scrolled down the data feed. Initiator code, Delta Victor Z09. His colleague frowned. That's Vance's code." The room went quiet. Dr. Donovan Vance, NASA's chief systems architect, presumed dead after the propulsion lab explosion 13 months ago. The man who built the first human ethics override network. Back at Fort Liberty, chaos simmered under a fragile surface of silence. Cameras flashed. Reporters pressed against the terminal glass. Security lines snaked backward for hundreds of feet. Flights were delayed, rerouted, or grounded entirely. Yet in the middle of all of it, two children sat side by side at a gate bench, untouched by the panic they'd caused. Emma's cheek was still pink from the slap. She leaned her head on Eli's shoulder, whispering, "Everyone's scared." Eli nodded. They should be. He watched the red light on his father's watch, still pulsing steady, calm, alive. It felt like a heartbeat. Not his, not Emma's, his dad's. On the other side of the glass, Clara Hensley was unraveling. "This is insane," she snapped at the federal agent beside her. "Those kids set off some hacking stunt. It's not real. It can't be real." The agent didn't answer. She was listening through an earpiece, eyes unfocused as she processed whatever was coming through the secure channel. Finally, she spoke. "It's real. We have confirmation from headquarters. The system authenticated itself under an active government code." "What system?" Clara demanded. The agent turned, calm as stone. "The one your airline ignored. The one designed to expose exactly this." Across the country, networks flickered. At Denver International, a gate agent stared as her boarding screens went black. At Seattle-Tacoma, pilots grounded their aircraft, staring at their tablets displaying the same red banner. Human ethics override. Vance protocol engaged. At Reagan National, Homeland Security analysts began to realize that 12 airports weren't just reacting. They were communicating. A silent cascade of data passed between terminals, a digital chorus repeating the same pattern. Protect minors. Dignity violation confirmed. Suspend operations. Someone murmured, "It's like it's thinking." In D.C., the operations center erupted again as a new alert popped up. Source signal verified. Device type, personal watch. Owner, Elias Vance, age 10. The room fell silent. The director removed his glasses. "A 10-year-old just froze our entire domestic network?" An older man in the back, gray hair and military bearing, leaned forward. "No, his father did. The boy just pressed the switch." Back at Fort Liberty, the crowd began to shift from confusion to something heavier, awareness. The businessman who'd spoken up earlier crossed his arms, watching Clara pace behind the gate desk. "You hit a kid," he said quietly. "Now the country knows." Clara spun around. "I made a mistake, all right? I didn't know who they were." He nodded slowly. "Maybe you should have asked." A few people clapped, not loud, just once or twice, small, deliberate sounds that broke the tension. Clara's eyes darted around the terminal. realizing phones were still filming, still streaming. She turned toward the children, voice cracking. "You've ruined everything." Eli met her gaze, unflinching. "No," he said. "You did." Emma shifted closer to him, whispering, "Is Dad really watching?" He hesitated. "I don't know." But then the watch beeped once, a soft, single tone. On its tiny face, words appeared in faint blue letters. Legacy Command Active Vance Network Online. Emma gasped. "Eli, it's talking." He couldn't breathe for a second. It's Dad's code. It's really him." In Washington, the director stared at his phone as a new message appeared from a secured network node that hadn't been active since the day of the NASA explosion. Message: Vance protocol confirmed. Human dignity priority. Do not interfere. He whispered, "That's not possible. The servers were destroyed." The older man behind him shook his head slowly. Vance was too smart to destroy his conscience. Fort Liberty. Gate 17. The federal agent knelt again in front of Eli and Emma. Around them, the crowd had fallen quiet again, held in that strange, reverent fear reserved for moments too big to process. "Eli," the agent said gently, "do you know what that watch is?" He shook his head. "No, only that it listens." She nodded. "Your father built something no one understood, a system that could recognize moral breaches, not just technical ones. It listens for dignity being broken, and when it hears it," she glanced around the terminal, "it stops the world until someone fixes it." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "He made that for us?" "For everyone," the agent said. "But you're the reason it worked." Eli frowned. "Because I pressed it?" She smiled faintly. "Because you didn't do it out of anger. He designed it to only activate when the intent was pure, when it came from defense, not revenge." The words hit him hard. For the first time since the slap, Eli's throat tightened not from fear, but from understanding. His dad had trusted him, trusted both of them, with something powerful enough to shake a nation, but delicate enough to only respond to decency. At that exact moment, the data feed at the FAA Center updated one last time. Ethics network synchronization complete. 12 airports linked. Central Command. Vance. Legacy. The man in the gray suit leaned over the terminal. "The network's alive again." Someone whispered, "Then what happens next?" He looked up at the map. 12 glowing dots, pulsing like a heartbeat. "It listens," he said. "It waits for the world to do the right thing." Back at Gate 17, the red light on Eli's watch flickered once more, then steadied to blue. Calm, restored. Emma exhaled a shaky breath, her hand still gripping his. "It stopped." "Yeah," he whispered, "because it hurt enough." For the first time since the slap, the air felt lighter. Not because justice was done yet, but because something bigger than them had decided to wake up. And somewhere deep inside, Eli felt it, that this was only the beginning. For the first time since the slap, the airport felt smaller, like the walls had closed in just to listen. The noise outside Gate 17 had settled into a strange, reverent hush. Screens still glowed red. Warning banners still scrolled gray flag active. But the crowd was no longer just afraid. They were waiting. Waiting for something or someone to answer. Eli sat beside his sister, their father's watch between them. The small red light had gone still, frozen in its glow, the way a heartbeat looks just before a monitor flatlines. Emma leaned closer, whispering, "Do you think it's over?" He shook his head. "It's never just over, not with Dad's stuff." The federal agent, Agent Reeves, they'd finally learned her name, was pacing nearby, talking quietly into her earpiece. Her voice was calm, but her eyes said otherwise. "Confirming," she said, one hand pressed to her ear. "Signal still live. Command origin verified as Legacy Vance server. I repeat, Legacy Vance. And no, sir, that's impossible because he's dead." She turned and caught Eli staring. He didn't look away. Reeves walked back over, crouching so her face was level with theirs. Eli, this watch. Did your father ever tell you what it could do? He hesitated. He said, if dignity's denied, hold it for 3 seconds. Her eyes softened. He told you that? Yeah, Eli said quietly. He didn't say why, just that it would listen. Reeves nodded slowly, as if she already knew the rest. Your father built something years ago, a program designed to override human negligence. It wasn't about power or punishment. It was about conscience. Emma frowned. Conscience? Reeves smiled faintly. A system that listens when people stop caring. The sound came first, a faint chime, like wind brushing across glass. Then the watch screen flickered. Static at first, then light. Eli froze. The glass face glowed with lines of code scrolling too fast to read, followed by a single blue pulse. And then, audio link initiated. Legacy node. Vance. The voice was faint, grainy, mechanical, like a radio transmission from another time, but it was unmistakable. If one day you are hurt where dignity is denied, press this. Emma gasped. That's... Eli's throat tightened. Dad. The system will hear you, the voice continued, soft and steady. And I will too. The words weren't live. They were recorded, embedded in the hardware years ago. But it didn't matter. The sound of their father's voice cracked something open in the room. Even the crowd behind them seemed to pause, drawn into the stillness. Clara Hensley, pale, makeup streaked, trembling, stood rooted to the spot. For a second, her face flickered between anger and disbelief before settling into shame. He's dead, she whispered. That's not possible. But the voice on the watch kept speaking, now intercut with flashes of system messages. Gray flag authentication, confirmed. Source integrity, 100. Ethics override active. Reeves took a slow breath. He built his voice into the system as part of its conscience check. Emma tilted her head. What's that? Reeves turned to her. It means the system won't act unless it hears empathy first. That recording, it's not just for you. It's a test. Every time someone triggers it, the system plays his message and listens to how the people around react. If it hears violence, vengeance, anger, it shuts down. But if it hears silence, restraint, compassion, she gestured to the glowing terminals around them, then it wakes up. Emma's small hand reached out, touching the side of the watch as if afraid it might disappear. So, Dad's voice kept it alive? Reeves smiled. In a way, yeah. He taught the machine to care before it could act. At that same moment, thousands of miles away, in the FAA control tower above DC, the systems team stared at an incoming data log. A voice signature had been detected, cross-referencing audio files from 2019. Dr. Donovan Vance, a technician said quietly. This isn't playback. It's an activation trigger. He built his own voice print as the core command line. The director rubbed his temple. You're telling me this entire network, 12 airports, just obeyed a man who's been dead for a year? Not him, another said. His code. The director looked up at the monitors. 12 red dots slowly fading to orange. Or maybe his conscience. At gate 17, the watch beeped again. System transfer complete. Ethics review initiated. Reeves straightened, pressing her earpiece. They've confirmed it. Washington's running full verification. Helios air flights worldwide are frozen until investigation. The gate agent behind her whispered, That's millions of dollars gone. Reeves didn't flinch. Then maybe they'll learn the cost of ignoring people. Clara stumbled back, whispering to herself, It was one mistake, one slap. Reeves turned toward her. That slap carried a system-wide signal because it symbolized something bigger. It wasn't just about 2 kids. It was about who we think deserves respect. Clara didn't respond. Her eyes were glassy, like she was realizing the truth too late. Eli stared at the watch. His father's voice echoed softly in his head. The system will hear you, and I will too. He whispered under his breath. You did, Dad. You heard us. Emma rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think he planned all this?" Eli shook his head. "I think he planned for people to forget and hoped we'd remind them." Behind them, phones buzzed again. News outlets had already cut into their broadcasts. Breaking, FAA confirms legacy, Vance ethics protocol activated. 12 airports frozen after assault on minor at Fort Liberty. The headlines rolled in like tides, each one louder, sharper. Yet through it all, Eli and Emma sat quietly. Two small figures at the center of a storm they never meant to start, and maybe that was exactly why it mattered. Reeves stood beside them, her expression softening. "You know," she said quietly, "when we lost your father, he told us something before the project went dark. He said, 'The world doesn't need heroes with power. It needs systems that remember how to feel.'" Eli smiled faintly. "Sounds like him." "It does," Reeves said. "And now, because of you, everyone else will remember him that way too." Outside the window, the first Helios jet sat motionless on the runway. Lights dimmed, engines off. The entire airline, a giant, brought to its knees by a child's press of a button and a father's voice that refused to fade. Emma wiped her cheek. "Do you think it'll ever start flying again?" Reeves looked at the silent planes and then at her. "Maybe, but not until they learn how to fly with dignity." Eli looked down at the watch one last time. The light on its face turned from red to blue, calm, restored, alive. And for the first time since their father's death, he didn't feel alone. At exactly 8:02 a.m., the map in the Federal Aviation Command Center turned red. One red dot became 2, then 4, then 12, spanning the country from Seattle to Miami. Helios Air. All operations suspended. Ethics protocol enforced by federal authority. Technicians stared at their screens in disbelief. Planes mid-taxi froze in place. Flights circling for landing were rerouted mid-air. 12 airports, every one serviced by Helios, were under full federal lockdown. A young analyst exhaled. "That's 6,000 flights." "Correction," his supervisor said grimly, reading a fresh report. 6,412. Total estimated delay costs, $12.8 million. He turned toward the glass office overlooking the control floor, where General Donovan Vance stood silent, watching the map pulse red. His reflection looked older, harder. Someone approached him with a folder. "Sir, it's confirmed. The trigger came from your son's device." The general didn't turn around. "I know. Back at Fort Liberty, the chaos was no longer silent. It had bloomed into full-blown hysteria. Passengers were shouting, filming, demanding answers. Security guards held the line, unsure whether to calm or contain. The once smooth Helios Air Terminal was now the center of a national scandal. And right in the middle of it sat Eli and Emma Vance, two kids who hadn't moved since the moment their father's voice spoke through the watch. Eli stared straight ahead, expression calm, but his hands twisted in his lap. Emma leaned close, whispering, "They all hate us now." He shook his head. "No, they're scared. It's different." Agent Reeves stood a few feet away, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, sir," she said sharply. "The FAA confirmed full activation. And yes, it's the original human ethics override. Vance Legacy Network. No, sir, we can't disable it manually. It runs on independent verification keys." Pause. Then, "Yes, sir. I'm aware that means every Helios aircraft is now grounded." She hung up slowly, looked toward the children, and exhaled. "He really built it to work without us." The cameras turned their way now. First local news, then national. A reporter with too much makeup leaned into her mic. "Breaking from Fort Liberty International, where 2 minors appear connected to the unprecedented grounding of 12 airports. Witnesses claim the incident began after a Helios flight attendant allegedly struck one of the children." Her voice faded under the hum of collective tension. Inside the glassed-off gate area, Clara Hensley stood surrounded by airport security. Her uniform jacket was wrinkled, her hair frayed, and her confidence, once razor-sharp, was crumbling fast. "This isn't fair," she kept saying. "I didn't know who they were. You can't destroy a career over a misunderstanding." The nearest officer didn't respond. He was reading something on his phone, a newly posted FAA bulletin that read, "Ethics Violation Level 4, Confirmed. Automated suspension of airline operations in effect." He looked up, his tone flat. "Ma'am, this isn't a misunderstanding anymore." Across the world, screens flickered. CNN, Reuters, BBC. Headlines poured in. 12 airports grounded after child assault at Fort Liberty. Gray flag. Protocol shuts down U.S. air network. Federal ethics override triggers multi-million-dollar lockdown. The story had gone global in less than an hour. Reeves's phone buzzed again. An encrypted message from HQ. "Effects cascading. Global flight delays projected. Confirm if children are safe." She looked over. Eli was sitting perfectly still, one hand holding Emma's, the other resting over his father's watch like a heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered to herself. "They're safe. For now." Eli finally broke his silence. "Agent Reeves?" She crouched down. "Yeah, kid. Why is everyone so angry at us? Dad didn't build this to hurt people." Reeves nodded. "You're right. He didn't. He built it to remind people what they forgot." Emma frowned. "Forgot what?" "That systems aren't supposed to protect power," she said softly. "They're supposed to protect people." The words landed heavy. Around them, passengers began murmuring. Not with outrage anymore, but with something new. Empathy. A mother holding her toddler said quietly, "They shouldn't have had to press anything." A man in a business suit nodded. "That woman hit a child. I saw it. We all saw it." Someone started clapping again. Slow, unsure, but real. Within seconds, others joined in. It wasn't applause for drama. It was relief. Recognition. Meanwhile, Clara's world was collapsing faster than she could breathe. Her phone vibrated. First one notification, then 20, then 50. Her name was trending. Clara Hensley had Helios scandal. Gray flag 17. One video replayed the moment of the slap from 5 different angles. Every upload got angrier captions. "When arrogance meets consequence, she slapped dignity itself." Clara sank into a chair, hands trembling. "I didn't mean it," she whispered. "I didn't mean—" Reeves looked at her, no malice in her eyes, just quiet truth. That's the problem. Nobody ever does until it's too late. In Washington, General Vance faced a panel of senior FAA officials and Homeland directors. Papers scattered across the table, reports, screenshots, maps glowing red. A younger executive slammed a folder shut. "General, this protocol has caused over $12 million in disruptions. The public's demanding answers." Vance met his gaze. "Then give them one." "Sir?" He leaned forward, voice steady. "Tell them that the cost of silence was higher, that 2 children had to remind the world what respect looks like." The room fell silent. Someone muttered, "You're saying this was justified?" Vance didn't flinch. "I'm saying it was inevitable." Back at the airport, the red lights began to dim. The loudspeakers crackled one last time. Ethics Protocol Level 4 verified. Gray flag status sustained pending review. It was over. For now. Eli looked down at his wrist. The light on the watch had faded to a calm blue, like a sky after a storm. Emma rested her head on his shoulder again. "Is Dad proud of us?" Eli didn't answer right away. He watched the crowd, the silence, the way strangers now looked at them differently, not with pity, but respect. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think he's watching, and I think he's proud of what the system became." He wasn't smiling, but something in his chest loosened. The smallest piece of peace, fragile and real. And somewhere across 12 airports, the same thought seemed to ripple silently through the world. Maybe justice didn't need noise to be heard. The room didn't look like a courtroom, but it carried the same weight. No windows, no microphones, Just a long, white table, 6 officials, and the quiet hum of an overhead light that flickered every few seconds. On the far end sat Clara Hensley, the woman who had once controlled entire first-class cabins with a tilt of her chin. Now her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the table. In front of her, a small screen glowed, paused on the moment that had ended everything. Her hand raised. A child's head turned. The slap. The sound wasn't playing, but everyone could still hear it. Across from her, 3 men and 3 women from the Federal Aviation Ethics Division watched in silence. Beside them, Agent Reeves stood with a tablet. Her expression was calm but unreadable, like someone who'd seen too much of this before. "Ms. Hensley," one of the panelists began, voice measured. "You've requested to make a statement before we review the incident log. Please proceed." Clara swallowed hard. "It wasn't what it looked like. I didn't mean to hurt her. I thought—" She stopped herself. The word "thought" felt dangerous here. "You thought what?" the panelist asked gently. "That she was lying," Clara said, voice cracking. "That they were pretending. We get kids like that sometimes. People trying to sneak up grades, faking stories for sympathy. I've seen it before." "And what did you base that assumption on?" Her lips trembled. "Their clothes, their age, they were alone. So, their appearance," another panelist said softly. Clara's face went pale. "I didn't know, that's not—" Reeves broke the silence. "The footage speaks for itself." She tapped her tablet. The screen lit up again, and the room filled with the faint audio of airport chatter. Then the crack of the slap. The camera zoomed on Emma's face, her shock, the way her small body wavered before catching balance again. Clara buried her face in her hands. The panel didn't speak for a long time. Only the faint hum of the air vent filled the space. Outside that sterile room, hundreds of miles away, 12 airports were still frozen in red light. Helios Air's control centers had gone dark. Executives scrambled in boardrooms, calling lawyers, lobbyists, and PR firms. But inside the tribunal, time felt slow, deliberate, honest in a way the world rarely allowed. Reeves placed another clip on the screen. This one was silent security footage from the minutes after the slap. Emma bending down to pick up her father's badge. Eli helping her, his thumb brushing over his father's watch. Then the red light blinked. Then the world stopped. The lead panelist folded his hands. "Ms. Hensley, are you aware of what that watch was?" She shook her head weakly. "No, I didn't even know watches could—" "It wasn't just a watch," he said. "It was an ethics node, a protected device tied to the Skylock system, a defense-grade network designed by Dr. Donovan Vance. It monitors human dignity violations in federal airspace." Clara blinked. "Dignity violations? You mean manners?" Reeves's voice was cool. "We mean abuse of power, discrimination, humiliation, any act that violates the basic code of respect protected under federal aviation ethics." Clara's eyes darted between them. "You're saying I triggered a national alert because I was rude?" "No," Reeves said softly. "Because you forgot she was human." The words hit like a punch, but no one raised their voice. That was the cruelest part. It wasn't anger that condemned her, but calm truth. The screen changed again, this time showing Eli and Emma sitting quietly after the chaos. Emma's cheek was still red, her brother's arm wrapped around her shoulder. The watch on his wrist glowed faint blue now. The crisis over. Reeves spoke again, her voice almost gentle. "They never asked for attention. They never demanded punishment. They didn't shout or fight back or even insult you. They just pressed a button that told the truth." Clara's voice broke. "They destroyed my life." Reeves shook her head. "No, you did. They just refused to carry your silence." The panelists conferred in quiet tones. After a few moments, the lead judge stood. "The evidence is conclusive. You are found in violation of Section 17C, Ethical Conduct Toward Protected Passengers. Effective immediately, your federal certification is revoked pending permanent review. Helios Air will receive notice within the hour. Clara stared blankly at the table. What happens to me now? Reeves met her eyes. You learn what every passenger you dismissed had to learn the hard way. What it feels like when no one believes you belong. For a long time, no one moved. Then Reeves shut off the tablet, and the screen went black. Outside the tribunal, reporters swarmed the hallway. Microphones, flashbulbs. The world had already heard. When Reeves exited the chamber, she didn't speak to them. She simply walked past, the two children waiting quietly on a bench by the wall. Eli looked up. Is it over? Reeves knelt down. For her, yes. For the world? Not yet. Emma clutched her brother's hand. She said we destroyed her life. Reeves smiled softly. Sometimes it takes one broken life to rebuild a fairer system. Eli's gaze drifted to the far end of the corridor, where a new banner hung on a mounted screen. FAA Directive 8821, the Vance Ethics Audit, effective immediately. He didn't know what it meant in detail, but he knew what it felt like. Justice that didn't roar, didn't punish for pleasure, just quietly corrected what was wrong. That evening, back in Washington, General Vance stood before another room, this one filled with reporters, senators, and aviation executives. His tone was quiet, but each word landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. My daughter did not start a war, he said. She reminded us that decency should not need authority to exist. The gray flag protocol worked as intended. It stopped us from becoming numb. Sir, a reporter shouted. Sir, what do you say to critics calling this an overreach? Vance didn't flinch. If saving a child from being humiliated is overreach, then we should all be reaching farther. At Fort Liberty, Eli and Emma watched the press conference on a muted screen in the terminal lounge. The camera caught their father's face, calm, strong, the same steady focus he used to have at home when he was building something new. Emma smiled faintly. He's really talking about us. Eli nodded. About Dad, too. For the first time, the red light above the gate turned green. Flights began to move again. Slow, but certain. Like the world taking its first breath after holding it too long. The system had paused itself to remember. And now, it was ready to fly again. Wiser, quieter, and finally awake. The morning after the tribunal, the headlines were merciless. She slapped a gold star child. Flight attendant behind gray flag scandal faces lifetime ban. Helios Air loses 12.8 men's overnight. Every outlet ran the same photo. Clara Hensley frozen mid-motion, her palm raised, eyes sharp with irritation. It had been paused, looped, dissected, and reposted millions of times. And now, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a symbol. At 9:30 a.m., Clara walked through the Helios Air headquarters in Atlanta for what she already knew was the last time. The building smelled like fresh coffee and money, the kind of place that had always made her feel untouchable. Today, everyone avoided eye contact. Screens along the corridor displayed muted news coverage. A banner scrolled under the footage. FAA confirms permanent revocation of Hensley's certification. Her ID badge no longer worked. The security gate didn't even blink when she tapped it. A guard she'd once scolded for leaning on his post now stood in front of her, stiff and professional. Ma'am, I'll need to escort you out. Clara tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. You're joking, right? The guard didn't move. Orders from compliance. You're listed under federal investigation. Investigation? She repeated. I was cleared yesterday. Not from this, he said quietly, lowering his voice. They're reviewing Helios for negligence, bias training violations, internal cover-ups. Someone had to take the first hit. And she realized then what every powerful person eventually learns. Systems don't protect you when you become bad PR. As the guard walked her out, employees watched from behind cubicle walls. Some whispered, others pretended to work. Her heels clicked across the marble floor, echoing like an accusation. Halfway down the hallway, she stopped, looking up at the giant company slogan etched in chrome letters above reception. Helios Air, where dignity takes flight. Her laugh was hollow. What a joke. The guard didn't respond. Outside, the press had gathered like a storm. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. Ms. Hensley, do you have a statement? Do you regret what happened at Gate 17? Did Helios train you to profile passengers? She raised a hand to block the flashes, voice trembling between anger and exhaustion. I made a mistake. One mistake. I was doing my job. The reporters didn't blink. One shouted back, "A child almost brought down your entire airline." Clara froze. There was no answer that wouldn't make it worse. Across the city, in a very different kind of room, Helios executives sat in silence around a long mahogany table. Their CEO, Martin Acker, was pale, staring at the FAA report on his tablet. Loss projections? He asked. The CFO didn't sugarcoat it. 12.8 million and counting. 3 major partners have frozen contracts. Heathrow suspended joint operations. Singapore followed. Acker leaned back, rubbing his temples. All this from one employee? No, sir, the compliance officer corrected. From one culture? He looked up sharply. Excuse me? She didn't flinch. Helios ignored renewal deadlines for bias training. You approved postponing ethics compliance reviews to cut costs. This isn't about one slap. It's about everything that made that slap possible. The room went silent. Meanwhile, at Fort Liberty, the terminal had slowly returned to life. Planes hummed. Boarding announcements resumed. But everyone who had been there that day carried a strange new awareness, like the world had tilted slightly toward decency. Eli and Emma sat by the window, watching the planes take off again. Do you think she's sorry? Emma asked quietly. Eli thought for a moment. I think she's scared. That's not the same thing. Agent Reeves, sitting nearby, lowered her coffee. Sometimes fear is the first step toward learning, but it only matters if she changes afterward. Emma looked thoughtful. Dad said change doesn't roar. It whispers. Reeves smiled. Sounds like he knew what he was talking about. Back in Atlanta, Clara sat alone in her car in the company parking lot. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from reporters, distant relatives, strangers telling her what kind of monster she was. She opened social media once, just once. The first post she saw wasn't from a news outlet. It was from a passenger who'd been at Gate 17. A blurry photo of 2 children sitting quietly after the incident. The caption read, "They didn't shout, they didn't fight back. They just pressed a button, and the system decided who was right." Clara stared at the screen until the words blurred. She closed her phone, leaned back, and whispered to no one, I didn't mean to hurt her. But the universe didn't care about meaning. It cared about impact. By evening, the fallout had gone global. 12 airports were still under partial review. Helios air stock had dropped 8%. The FAA announced a Dignity Compliance Task Force, and Clara's name appeared in every internal memo as the cautionary tale. The proof that arrogance had a price. In Washington, General Donovan Vance reviewed the day's reports from his office window. When he saw Clara's name on the official sanctions list, he didn't smile. He simply nodded once, as if closing a file that had been waiting too long to end. Then he turned toward his next meeting, an emergency briefing with the Department of Transportation. His mission wasn't revenge, it was reform. Night fell. The world had moved on. But in a small hotel outside the city, Clara sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the folded Helios uniform on the chair. For 18 years, it had been her armor, her identity, her reason to be respected. Now it was just fabric. She picked up her phone again, scrolling aimlessly until a live stream caught her eye. The FAA press conference replay. General Vance was speaking. We created systems like Skylock not to punish people, but to remind them that dignity is not optional. When it disappears, the system doesn't fail, it intervenes. Clara watched, unable to look away. She realized for the first time what she'd really lost. Not her job, not her reputation, her humanity. At Fort Liberty, Emma pointed out the window of the plane as the nightlights shimmered below. Look, Eli, she whispered. Everything's still glowing. He smiled faintly. That's the system catching its breath. She leaned against him. Think it'll stay this way? He looked down at his father's watch. Blue now, peaceful, alive. Only if people remember what stopped it in the first place. Washington, D.C. 2 weeks after the gray flag activation, the marble halls of the National Aeronautics Memorial Center glowed beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen stars. Rows of cameras faced a polished stage draped in blue and gold, where the U.S. flag hung between the emblems of the FAA and NASA. The official title of the day was the Federal Dignity Recognition Ceremony. But to Eli and Emma, it was just Dad's day. They stood side by side at the front row, small, serious, dressed in perfectly pressed navy suits that still felt too big. Their shoes shined, but their eyes were heavy. Emma leaned toward her brother, whispering, "I wish he could see this." Eli swallowed hard. "He can." Behind them, guests murmured, the hum of senators, journalists, and executives trying to sound reverent. The air carried that strange mix of grief and pride that people wear when they're finally paying attention. Agent Reeves stood quietly in the aisle, hands clasped behind her back. When Eli caught her eye, she nodded once, like a silent promise that the world would keep remembering. The host's voice echoed through the chamber. "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for General Donovan Vance, Deputy Director of Homeland Security and founder of the Skylock Ethics Initiative." Applause rose and fell like a tide. The general walked to the podium, his posture precise, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. But when his gaze found Eli and Emma in the front row, something softened. He began quietly. "Today we honor not only the memory of a brilliant mind, Dr. Donovan Vance, but also the legacy of his belief that technology should never replace humanity, but protect it." His voice carried the weight of truth. The gray flag protocol was not a weapon. It was a conscience, a safety line woven into the fabric of our airways. And 2 children reminded the world that conscience still matters. The cameras turned toward Eli and Emma. The siblings straightened in their seats, the moment catching their breath. The general continued. "Because of that reminder, today we officially implement the Vance Dignity Protocol, a mandatory ethics verification system for all U.S. airlines. Every employee, from crew to command, will now be held to the same standard, accountability with compassion." The applause this time was different, sincere, warm, grateful. When the time came, an aide stepped forward, carrying a small glass case. Inside, a medal gleamed, silver trimmed in gold, engraved with 3 words, "Honor in silence." The general's voice softened. "This medal is presented posthumously to Dr. Donovan Vance, and in living tribute to his children, Eli and Emma Vance, whose courage restored faith in quiet justice." He motioned them forward. Eli hesitated. The stage lights seemed too bright, the applause too loud. Emma squeezed his hand, and together they climbed the steps. The general knelt slightly as he placed the medal in their hands. "You didn't just stop an injustice," he said softly. "You reminded us who we are supposed to be when no one's watching." Emma blinked back tears. "We just pressed the button." He smiled faintly, and the world finally listened. The ceremony continued with speeches, FAA directors, airline CEOs, even a few politicians trying to sound human again. They spoke of policy, reform, and the need for empathy in the skies. But Eli barely heard them. His attention stayed on the medal, the way it shimmered when the light hit it, the same way his father's watch used to glint when he leaned over his workbench. He remembered the smell of machine oil and coffee, his dad's steady hands assembling something small and silver. He'd asked him once, "Why make machines that talk?" And his father had said, "So they can remind us when we stop listening to each other." Eli smiled without realizing it. Outside the hall, hundreds of people gathered to watch on large screens. A group of airline workers stood shoulder to shoulder, some still in uniform, others holding signs that read, "Dignity is policy." "We remember Gate 17. One of them, A middle-aged flight attendant with kind eyes told a reporter, "We used to joke that passengers lost their manners. Maybe we lost ours first. I'm just glad someone reminded us." After the ceremony, as the crowd filtered out into the marble foyer, Eli and Emma were escorted to a smaller room where sunlight spilled through stained glass shaped like wings. Agent Reeves met them there, a small velvet box in her hand. "This isn't official," she said with a rare smile, "but we thought your dad would have liked it." Inside the box was his watch, polished, repaired, its faint blue light steady once again. Emma gasped. "You fixed it." Reeves shook her head. "It fixed itself the moment the system reset. It only needed to rest." Eli slipped it onto his wrist. It fit better now, like it had been waiting for him to grow into it. "Keep it," Reeves said. "As long as it stays blue, it means the system's listening. The moment it turns red," Eli finished the sentence softly, "it means the world forgot." Reeves nodded. "Let's hope it never does again." Outside, the evening sun turned the Capitol dome gold. Reporters called this the dawn of the dignity era. But for Eli and Emma, it felt simpler. They stood on the museum steps, the metal between them, the watch glowing faintly against Eli's wrist. Emma looked up at the sky where planes cut through streaks of light. "Do you think Dad's still out there?" Eli smiled. "No, I think he's right here." He tapped the watch gently, every time someone remembers to be kind. She nodded, and together they watched a jet lift off into the fading blue, calm, balanced, unhurried. Inside the hall, the last line of the ceremony's inscription was being engraved beneath the new memorial plaque. "Some systems run on power, others run on conscience. Dr. Donovan Vance." And in that quiet, between the hum of machinery and the echo of applause long faded, something invisible but enduring settled over the world. A promise that this time, dignity would not need a button to be remembered. The house was quiet again. For the first time in months, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. Eli sat at his father's old desk, the one covered in faint scratches and pencil marks from a life spent designing things that changed the world. Outside, the autumn light poured through the window, painting the floor in gold. The medal from Washington rested beside the keyboard. Next to it lay the silver watch, glowing softly blue. He turned it over in his hands, running his thumb along the engraving on the back. "If dignity is denied, press and hold 3 seconds." He smiled faintly. "Guess we did, huh?" Behind him, Emma sat cross-legged on the rug with a stack of stationery. She was writing a letter in her small, careful handwriting. The words came slow, like she was afraid of breaking them. When she finished, she folded the paper neatly and looked up. "Can we put it in his drawer?" Eli nodded. "Yeah, he'd like that." They stood together in front of their father's cabinet, an old oak piece that still smelled faintly of coffee and solder. Eli opened the top drawer. Inside were blueprints, sketches, and one unfinished letter addressed to future operators of the Skylock program. Emma placed her folded note on top. "It's for him," she whispered. "What did you write?" Eli asked. She hesitated. "That I miss him, but I think he built something bigger than himself, and that he doesn't have to worry about us anymore." Eli's throat tightened. "That's good." She smiled softly. "What are you gonna say?" Eli looked down at a blank sheet in front of him. He clicked the pen once, twice, and began writing. "Dear Dad." We pressed the button. The system listened. The world changed. He paused, staring at the words. He didn't know what to write next. Not because he had nothing to say, but because he had too much. Emma leaned over his shoulder, reading quietly. "You should tell him about the medal." He smiled. "He doesn't need medals. He'd rather hear about the people." So he wrote more. "People are nicer now, even at the airport. Agent Reeves says the new training program is called the Vance Protocol, and every crew member has to take it. Some of them even say your name like it means something again. I didn't know you could fix the world by pressing one button, but maybe it wasn't the button. It was what you built into it, a conscience. He set the pen down and blew out a slow breath. The words looked too grown up for a 10-year-old. But then again, maybe he wasn't 10 anymore. Not really. Emma nudged him. You forgot to say goodbye. Eli smiled, finished the letter with one last line. We're okay now. You can rest, but we'll keep listening for you. He folded the paper carefully, tucked it next to Emma's, and closed the drawer. The wood made a soft, final click. Later that evening, the two sat on the porch as twilight bled into the horizon. The first stars were out, small and stubborn. Planes crossed the sky every few minutes, thin silver streaks against a violet dusk. Emma leaned her head on Eli's shoulder. Do you think it's really working? The system, I mean. Eli nodded slowly. Reeves said no violation since the update. Every time a crew member logs in, they have to take the dignity pledge. If someone fails it twice, they can't fly until retrained. That sounds boring, Emma said. He laughed quietly. Yeah, but sometimes boring is good. They watched another plane climb into the distance, its lights blinking soft against the dark. Maybe he's on one of them, Emma said dreamily. Just watching. Eli looked at the watch on his wrist. The faint blue light flickered once, like a wink. Maybe, he said. Or maybe he's in all of them. The phone buzzed. A notification from Reeves. Subject. Thank you, the first official dignity report just went live. 0 incidents this quarter. You two changed more than you'll ever know. Eli handed the phone to Emma. She read it, grinning. She's nice. He nodded. Yeah, she's the kind of grown-up Dad trusted to finish what he started. They fell quiet again. Crickets hummed somewhere in the yard. The kind of sound that reminded you life was still moving forward. Emma broke the silence. Do you think it's weird that we made the world stop? Eli thought for a moment. It didn't stop. It just took a breath. Inside, the clock ticked softly. On the desk, their father's watch pulsed once more, then dimmed. The blue glow faded, not because something was wrong, but because everything was finally right. Emma turned toward her brother. It stopped blinking. Yeah, he said quietly. It's resting. But what if the world forgets again? He looked at her. The kind of look that carried more weight than words. Then we remind it, together. She smiled, small and sure. Okay. Before bed, Emma walked to the window and whispered into the night. Good night, Dad. The stars above shimmered brighter for a second. Or maybe that was just what hope looks like when you believe it. Downstairs, Eli sat alone for a moment longer, listening to the faint hum of distant engines passing overhead. He whispered to himself, We pressed it, Dad. The world heard. Then he looked up, smiling through the quiet, as another jet crossed the sky like a shooting star that had finally learned how to stay aloft. And somewhere between the engines and the wind, between what was lost and what was found, one truth settled like a heartbeat through the night. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it just kept time. Brussels, 6 months later. The ballroom of the Global Passenger Ethics Forum was a cathedral of glass and quiet anticipation. Flags from 40 nations lined the stage, and the air shimmered with the low hum of translation headsets and cameras waiting for someone to begin. On the center banner, printed in muted silver letters, were 5 words that had already changed the world. Dignity is not optional, it's policy. Eli and Emma stood backstage, small against the sheer scale of the room. They'd traveled halfway across the world for this moment, though they still weren't sure why the organizers had invited them. Emma whispered, I thought this was for grown-ups. Eli adjusted his tie, awkward, crooked. Dad said systems don't care about age, just about who's brave enough to tell the truth. Agent Reeves appeared from the wings, her suit neat, her voice calm. You ready? Emma bit her lip. I don't even know what to say. Reeves smiled faintly. Say what you know, the rest will follow. Then the curtains parted, and the applause began. Not loud, not thunderous, but steady. The kind of sound that felt like respect, not spectacle. Eli took a breath, walked to the podium, and looked out. Rows of airline executives, policymakers, pilots, and ethics officers stared back. Cameras flashed, and somewhere in the back, a woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. He adjusted the mic, voice soft but certain. 6 months ago, my sister and I were just passengers. We didn't plan to change anything. We just didn't want the world to look away anymore. The room went still. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. My dad built something called the Skylock system. He said it wasn't made to punish people. It was made to remind them. He told us once that the sky isn't just air. It's responsibility. When you fly, you're part of something bigger than yourself. He paused. The kind of pause that wasn't hesitation. It was reverence. My sister pressed the button because someone forgot that. Emma stepped up beside him now, her voice smaller but steady. When you're 11 and someone hits you, you don't think about rules or systems. You just think, this is wrong. And when no one helps you, you wonder if being quiet means being invisible. But my dad used to say silence can be strength if you use it the right way. Her gaze lifted, meeting the audience head on. So that's what we did. We used it. The room erupted into applause, slow, deliberate, rising like a tide. Afterward, as they stepped down, a tall woman in a gray blazer approached them. The nameplate read Elena Markovic, European Aviation Commissioner. She smiled warmly. That was remarkable. You reminded an entire industry that ethics isn't paperwork, it's human. Eli blushed a little. We just pressed a button. Elena shook her head. No, you pressed a conscience, and it woke up. She handed them an envelope embossed with gold lettering. The forum's Resolution 21 has passed unanimously. The Vance Dignity Accord is now a global standard. Every major airline in the world has agreed to the Skylock framework. Emma's eyes widened. Even in other countries? Yes, Elena said softly, because some things don't need translation. Outside, cameras followed them through the plaza as reporters shouted questions in every language. French, Japanese, Arabic, Spanish. But one voice broke through the noise. Emma, Eli, what's next for you two? Eli paused, looked straight into the nearest camera, and smiled faintly. We go home, we go back to being kids, but we'll always keep watching the skies. It wasn't rehearsed, but the words landed perfectly. They would be replayed on every network that night, captioned in 30 languages. Later that evening, the twins sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the city lights. Airplanes drifted through the distant dark, blinking like slow-moving stars. Emma held her father's watch between her palms. It glowed soft blue, then blinked once, just once. Eli smiled. Guess it approves, she giggled. Maybe it's saying goodnight. They fell silent for a while, the way siblings do when words are unnecessary. Below, the streets of Brussels glowed gold under rain-soaked cobblestones. People were still awake, reporters, delegates, locals, but up here, it was just them and the quiet sky. Eli leaned back. Do you think Dad would be proud? Emma didn't hesitate. He already was. Across the ocean, in a newsroom in Washington, a reporter closed her segment with a soft smile. And so, from the children once told they didn't belong in first class, came a reform that now protects passengers across the world. The FAA confirmed today that no major airline has failed its dignity audit since the Skylock Accord began. Maybe justice doesn't always roar. It sometimes travels quietly at 30,000 feet. Weeks later, in airports from Tokyo to Toronto, new signs appeared above boarding gates. Dignity protocol in effect. All passengers, all classes, equal in respect. Flight attendants touched the signs before boarding like a ritual. Pilots carried Skylock patches on their sleeves. Even travelers noticed something different. The tone in the air, the small courtesies, the way someone would pause before rushing past a child, an elder, or a stranger. The system hadn't just changed procedures, it had changed behavior. At Fort Liberty, the gate once labeled 17 now bore a new plaque, in memory of those who reminded us that silence can still speak. Gate 17. The Vance Initiative visitors often stop to take pictures, some leaving flowers or folded notes. One message, written in a child's scrawl, read, "Thank you for fixing the sky." Back in their hometown, Eli and Emma sat under the same porch light that once flickered on the night of the incident. Fireflies glowed in the yard. The world had moved on, but not away. Emma rested her head on his shoulder. "It's weird," she said. "Everything feels normal again." Eli smiled softly. "That's the point. Justice isn't supposed to make noise forever. It's supposed to let people breathe." She nodded, closing her eyes. "Do you think it'll last?" He looked at the watch again. The faint blue light pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. "As long as someone remembers why it started," he said, "it will." The wind shifted, carrying the sound of a plane overhead. Steady, peaceful, free. For a moment, Eli thought he heard his father's voice in the hum of the engines. Not words, just feeling. Pride, calm, and the quiet certainty of a system that finally learned to protect what mattered most. He smiled, whispering into the night, "We did it, Dad. The sky remembers."